Welcome back, everybody. Part five. I'm just be very careful that I'm not reading you the same thing I read yesterday. Okay, part five. So we're 2 weeks out. We're in sort of good shape, but we've never seen. A really important thing is we never see the show because each night they'll be rehearsing different things. One night it would be the NHS, one night it would be the Green and Pleasant Land because they had big volunteers. They couldn't rehearse the whole thing together, so they would rehearse it in sections. And they would start at a certain time of the day and the call would end at the other time of the day. But where that related to the lighting in our show was arbitrary. So we were never really seeing the whole of a section perfectly lit in the lighting conditions that we would have. 13th of July. At the production meeting, the tension is clearly ramping up. Instead of his customary good humour and easy banter, Danny's face is unsmiling as he announces that under some pressure from our producers, he's had to make cuts in the show and is clearly not happy about it. Or at least we're going to try some of the proposed cuts. Whether or not we do them is another matter, as I will have to see what I think once we've rehearsed the pieces. Then a long discussion about what it will take to rehearse the volunteers, how long, how much it will cost, and so on. Danny's team are backing off a bit now. Rather than demanding changes and additions to things themselves, they remain silent. Danny really only has Tracy Seawood, his feisty but very cool producer, standing up for him publicly. I can only imagine the pressure they must both be under. Even though we now have seen some great moments in the show, the technical improvements to make these all happen on the night are legion. Does Danny wonder if it's going to be a disaster or not? The other day I asked him what his plans were for the week after the show, if he was going to go on holiday or something. Well, that depends, he replied. Have a fag with Stephen Daldry later, despite my best intentions not to smoke. The pressure's on now. My Dutch director friend, Menno Meijers, said to me on the phone the other day, "Darling, just take up smoking. It'll do you good over the next couple of months. Then just give up when it's over." Stephen smiling and as cool as ever. God, of course, London isn't Beijing and it's a completely different show. And then, God, what a mess this all is. Not quite sure where he sits now. I talked to helicopter pilot Mark Wolf on the pier. He happened to helicopter pilot Mark Wolf, who was the great aerial helicopter pilot of all time. Flew helicopters in Vietnam at the age of 19. Did all the helicopter stunts and all the James Bond movies. And he happened to have a boat next to ours on the pier. I talked to helicopter pilot Mark Wolf on the pier in the morning to find out how the lighting looked last night from above the stadium. He tells me it's all fine, but of course in half daylight it's difficult to know what we'll read. I drive into the stadium to find a sign at White Post Lane saying this gate closes from Monday. Disaster! I checked with the security guys and it's correct. No entrance from next week, and everyone now has to use the Stratford gate that takes 45 minutes to get through. And at Stratford, I've got nowhere to park the bike. 4th of July. I take my crew out to dinner in Westfield this evening as a bonding exercise. We're starting work later this evening, so this is the first chance in ages to have something halfway decent to eat. It's a great night where we drink a couple of beers, talk, keep a nice vibe up, ready for the final push. I tell them that we're doing really well at the moment, but the thing will very likely take a turn at some point as the pressure builds in all departments, and we need to be a united group when it all kicks off. Back at the stadium, the lighting looks good tonight, probably to do with the smoke in the air and the alcohol in my system, but the tension is gone, and I ride home through the pouring rain yet again feeling pretty good. 15th of July. Last coffee with Lucy in the wheelhouse after a decent night's sleep, and then kiss her goodbye with real longing. She'll be back on Tuesday, but I'm already missing her as I get to the end of the pier. We see the cauldron, codenamed Betty, after Catherine's dog, going up tonight after rehearsals finish, and talk to the designer Thomas Heatherwig about how to light it. He's very arty and friendly with a shoulder bag and interesting shoes, and he's incredibly enthusiastic, like a puppy. And so young. He told me this great thing, which is they always try and do something different with the Olympic cauldron. And they said, oh, well, let's go to Thomas Heatherwig. He was the new Wunderkind director, young, enthusiastic. And he said, yeah, well, they came to me and they said, you've got you can do whatever you like. There's 170 companies represented, whatever it is. So we need to have that represented somewhere. Otherwise, Geordie, there's only two rules. One is that the cauldron has to be up on the top of the stadium, and the other is that it can't be mechanical. Once it's lit, that's it. So what did Thomas do? He went away and said, no, it's going to be in the middle of the stadium, and because the middle of the stadium was the stage, it had to be parked off to one side until, on cue, it tracks a good 50, 60 yards under the stage, all folded down, gets underneath the stage. Everything has to be unfolded, all the 170,000 things, all the gas lines connected, the electric triggering lines directed, and then on cue, all 170 of the arms have to go up, not at the same time, one by one in a great sequence, and they have to be lit automatically one by one. So it was a huge thing. And we cursed him because normally when you're doing a show, once you're into it and you've got most of it out of the way, you can really relax. But this was the very last part of the show and the most challenging technically, I would suggest, maybe after the helicopter thing. But the idea of this going absolutely perfectly, and it doesn't bear thinking about what would have happened if it got stuck halfway. We didn't allow ourselves to think about that. 16th July. White Post Lane has now been closed and I have to find a new way into the park. I go into work early and spend an hour driving around the back streets next to Stratford Station to see if I can find somewhere to park the scooter. There's a bridge that leads from the bus station into a very run-down housing estate. I cruise slowly around it, being clocked by frightening groups of kids in hoodies, overweight skinhead thugs and silent Asian families. Talked to a friendly group of West Indians. You don't want to leave that scooter here, brother, he said. You won't see it the next day. And they all laugh. I see a couple of women with pinched faces, smoking and leaning against the front door of a small house and introduce myself. Can I pay you £25 a week to park here, I ask them. Suspicious to begin with, their eyes light up with the promise of cash, and a deal is struck with Elena, the bottle-blonde Russian with bad teeth and her equally hard-looking mother. Not as reliable or as sweet bean at White Post Lane, but at least a possibility. We run the Thanks Tim section, and it's terrible. I sit calmly with Adam and TV lighting guru Al, and who methodically explains how we can make the situation better. We try altering the focuses and then use different fixtures to increase the light level on the performers. Suddenly we have a look that lights all the action on the stage but still lets us do all the dynamic chases and effects over the top. Huge relief as we look at the stadium in a new light and realise there's nothing wrong with having it much brighter than we had first considered. Then a long programming section afterwards where we use this technique to relight the piece, simplifying the cues, making the lighting cleaner, brighter and more impactful. I leave late with a positive sense of what it might look like if we get this right. 17th July. Meeting with video content director Leo Warner to go through all the pixel programming cues and see how they're working with our lighting scheme. He's very collaborative. He's very collaborative, and if his video content works cleanly with our lighting choices, we agree that we have a real chance to make this unlike anything that's been seen before. Then a session with our follow spot operators, all gathered in the seats at the top of the stadium. I'm meeting them collectively for the first time together, and it's my moment to talk to them ahead of our battle for Agincourt. Stiffen the sinews, summon up the blood. It's really important to make sure they're fired up and ready for the show in 10 days' time, but I also want to let them know what an important part of the lighting they are providing and how valuable their contribution is to the project. I remember talking to Bobby Dickinson, a famous American lighting designer who's done 2 or 3 Olympic Games and does a lot of big stadium stuff. And he says the follow spot operators are your secret weapon because there's always stuff that changes at the last minute, always people who go off piste. And if you just need a bit of extra light, something's not working. If you've got them and they're on board and they're professional and they know what they're up to. So it was great how well they turned out to work. We run Swing Out Sister, the NHS thing, and that's a mess now. Too dark, too saturated, and horrible reflections on the floor. By the time we run it the second time, it's more together. For the first time, I see really good... Sorry, I have an email. And It's more together, and for the first time I see really good, clean-looking pictures on our monitors. Long and intricate lighting programming session where we are mostly looking at the focus of the lights. The M25 track now has its geotext cover down and has been cut to shape and looks clean and exciting in the wide shots. Beijing-like almost. I'm on the scooter at 2 a.m. feeling pretty good. 2 a.m. was an early night. The guys would always work through till dawn. But I would then have the, 8 o'clock meeting for the paramedic something or others. So I would try and get away an hour or two early if I could. 18th of July. Nice brekker at Carluccio's with Alice and Lucy, and then scoot into work after my lunch of a pint of gazpacho from the Frigidaire Laura. The food is so bad at the venue, almost inedible, that I eat little when I'm there at work, except for bars of chocolate and the odd stodgy sandwich. I've taken on Menno's temporary smoking concept with gusto, and that seems to be working well. It means eating less, and very good for the nerves, you see. We watched the Industrial Revolution section run in the daylight and in costume for the first time, and it looks great. A real shame that Danny's cut the Nimrod music underneath the Brunel speech, and I go down to try and talk him back into it. He tells me that Rick, his composer from Underworld, feels the same way as I do, and clearly there's pressure from other quarters for him to put it back in again. Not quite sure why it's happened, except it's all part of the cuts. Run SOS in the evening and our stuff looks good. But the problem is we're seeing a maximum of perhaps 40 minutes a night of the show run in darkness with the cast and cameras, at which point everyone packs up and leaves. So it's really difficult to make a judgment on this basis. As I was explaining, the show is not run in real time, so we're never quite sure what we're seeing is the real thing. At the meeting afterwards, I sit with Hamish and his two producers, Mel and Ian. They're sanguine and committed to working hard to make this right, but like me, they see the wheels coming on the bus, just as Hamish had predicted. Danny breezes in and starts the meeting with, "Great work, everyone, great work. Looks fantastic. A bit messy tonight, though," and then proceeds to get into real detail like, could the water wheel slow down before it stops in time to the music, or the people dragging the hedges weren't quite in step. Meanwhile, the show's 15 minutes too long and 2 of the 3 production numbers are a big mess. Then Mel drops a bombshell. You know Danny's dropped McCartney from the ending, don't you? That's unforgivable. That will have enormous repercussions. I'm off to see him to rehearse tomorrow, and of course he doesn't know yet. God knows what will happen when he does, and the publicity doesn't bear thinking about. On reflection, I think that Danny has suggested the McCartney cut to shake up the producers and allow him to be the one who makes the decisions, but has no real intention of going through with it. I think he just said, well, just cut McCartney from the end. That will save us 5 minutes. That will solve the problem. No. Danny's problem is that he must cut. The show is simply too long. But he doesn't want to lose a whole section, and with it, any of the volunteers who have committed months of their lives unpaid to perform in it. There would be an enormous blow-up. Plus, that's not his way. He's constantly looking out for his cast and bigging them up and checking on their welfare and being accessible when they come up to talk to him. I often see him chatting to a cast member or listening to their problems. At the meeting today, his first question is about someone on the crew. Some of the stagehands have come up to me to say that one of their guys has been denied access by security. They're really upset by this. They say he's a good guy. He's got a bit of form. Laughter from everyone in the room. And can we appeal to get him back? When Catherine says they automatically appeal any rejection, but if it's denied a second time, it's usually with very good reason. She asked Danny why he was here today if he had been denied access, and Danny replies, well, he was here, but I'm not quite sure how he managed to get in. More laughter in the room. It's all amusing, but in the end, it's not what he should be focusing on. Every time Danny asks for the time to try one of the scenes again, our stage manager, Sam Hunter, says, I'm sorry, but there is just no time left in the schedule. Danny's realising that the only option at this point is either to cut the effect completely or else to run it in the show without having teched it properly, something that would never be allowed to happen in theatre. We work right through till dawn again. Some good progress is made. One of the programmers is withdrawn and uncommunicative tonight, and I have to work hard on getting him back up and on side again. Everyone is under pressure now, and my job, as much as the creative, is keeping the ship heading in the right direction with a happy crew on board. Yeah, keep the shit heading in the right direction. There were times when I thought that as well. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, of course we had confidence we were going to make something good. There's no doubt about it. It was a great team of people. We had the lights that we wanted. We had some time in hand. It's just the stakes were really high. I mean, you just wouldn't want to have got it wrong. That's the main thing that we all felt. Part 6, the penultimate one, tomorrow. See you then.